Climate migration and future collective trauma. The trauma that hasn't happened yet, but is already here. Most trauma is discussed in past tense. War happened, genocide happened, famine happened, but climate trauma is different. It unfolds slowly. It creeps, it does not explode, it erodes. And because it erodes gradually, it is easy to deny, until the house floods, until the crops fail, until insurance premiums double, until migration becomes necessity, not aspiration. Climate change is not only an environmental crisis, it is a psychological one. And it is reshaping national imprints in real time. The mechanism: slow-onset stress. Climate migration does not begin with dramatic collapse. It begins with unease, unpredictable seasons, recurring disasters, economic volatility linked to resource instability. This creates chronic stress. Chronic stress activates the nervous system repeatedly, not in acute bursts, but in prolonged vigilance. Unlike a single war event, climate disruption sustains low-level hyperarousal. The brain adapts to unpredictability. It scans constantly. It anticipates scarcity. That anticipation becomes imprint. This is future trauma, forming before displacement even occurs. Pacific Islands and Bangladesh. Losing place, losing anchor. For low-lying Pacific Island nations and parts of Bangladesh, sea level rise is not abstract. It is geographic erosion. Land is not only property, it is identity, it is ancestry. It is spiritual grounding. When rising water threatens land, the loss is not only economic. It is existential. Displacement fractures belonging. Intergenerational grief emerges. Grandparents who remember abundance. Parents who remember decline. Children who inherit relocation. Migration here is not upward mobility. It is forced adaptation. Loss of place attachment destabilizes cultural continuity. And cultural continuity stabilizes identity. When that anchor dissolves, anxiety deepens. This is not theoretical, it is already occurring. Australia. Scarcity anxiety in a resource-rich nation. Australia historically carries an abundance imprint. Vast land, natural resources. Lucky country narrative. But bushfires, floods, and climate extremes have introduced instability into that story. Homes lost. Insurance challenges. Evacuations. Repeated disaster cycles. Scarcity anxiety begins to surface. Not because Australia lacks resources, but because unpredictability increases. A resource-rich country facing environmental vulnerability develops cognitive dissonance. Abundance meets fragility. This tension reshapes national narrative. And when narrative shifts, so does psychology. Global South. Chronic instability intensified. In drought-affected regions of Africa and parts of India, climate disruption compounds existing instability. Agricultural dependency increases vulnerability. When harvests fail, economic migration rises, family separation increases. Children may migrate for work. Parents remain behind. This amplifies chronic stress. Hypervigilance becomes normal. Migration becomes survival strategy. Chronic instability hardens imprint. And hardened imprint influences attachment, authority trust, and risk tolerance. Climate disruption does not create instability alone. It intensifies it. Youth and eco-anxiety. Younger generations increasingly report eco-anxiety, fear of planetary decline, fear of political inaction, fear of inherited crisis. This is sometimes dismissed as overreaction. It is not. Anticipatory grief is psychologically real. When youth perceive long-term instability, hope contracts. In some regions, eco-anxiety correlates with depression and suicidal ideation. Meaning frameworks, religious, spiritual, communal, can buffer distress. But when community cohesion weakens, anxiety isolates. Isolation magnifies threat perception. Threat perception sustains stress response. This is how future trauma embeds. Pre-traumatic stress. Traditionally, trauma follows event. Climate anxiety reverses that order. Stress emerges before catastrophic displacement. Pre-traumatic stress involves constant anticipation of future disaster, difficulty planning long-term, reduced trust in stability, nervous systems primed for disruption. When instability persists, baseline anxiety rises. This is not irrational. It is adaptive, but adaptation sustained too long exhausts. Belonging erosion. Migration, whether internal or cross-border, challenges belonging. When relocation occurs, cultural context shifts. Language may change, community support may fragment. Belonging erosion is psychological. It weakens identity coherence. Without belonging, resilience decreases. Communities historically rooted in place must reconstruct identity elsewhere. That reconstruction requires deliberate effort. Without it, fragmentation increases. Strength, adaptation. Human history is migration history. Communities have relocated before. Adaptation is possible. Cultural traditions can travel. Meaning systems can buffer grief. Spiritual practices can sustain cohesion, but adaptation requires support. Without policy alignment, mental health resources, and community integration, displacement becomes compounding trauma. Blind spot, chronic distress. Normalization of instability carries risk. When disasters become routine, emotional numbing can occur. Numbing reduces empathy. Reduced empathy destabilizes community cohesion. Cohesion protects mental health. Thus, chronic stress not only harms individuals, it strains social fabric. The intersection with inequality. Climate trauma does not distribute evenly. Low and middle-income countries bear disproportionate burden. Inequality compounds vulnerability. Youth in unstable regions face layered stress. Economic insecurity, environmental instability, political fragility. Layered stress increases psychological load. Without culturally responsive support systems, risk escalates. Culturally responsive support. Western trauma models may not translate universally. Community-based coping mechanisms matter. Spiritual leadership, ritual continuity, intergenerational storytelling, collective mourning. These are not soft tools. They regulate nervous systems. Climate migration support must integrate cultural context. Otherwise, intervention remains superficial. The provocative reality. Climate trauma is not coming, it is unfolding. The question is not whether migration will increase. It will. The question is whether societies will integrate psychological preparedness alongside logistical planning. Infrastructure alone does not prevent fragmentation. Psychological scaffolding does. If countries ignore emotional dimensions of displacement, instability multiplies. Future imprint check exercise. Journal the following. What climate changes are already visible in my region? How do they influence my sense of stability? Do I feel subtle scarcity anxiety? What strengths does my culture have that support adaptation? What one preparation step can I take, practically or psychologically? Preparation reduces helplessness. Helplessness fuels anxiety. Agency regulates it. Closing reflection, you may not relocate. You may not experience direct displacement, but your children might. Your grandchildren might. Climate imprint will shape future national identities. Scarcity narratives may intensify. Authority structures may shift. Migration patterns will redraw belonging. Understanding this does not require panic. It requires clarity. Clarity prepares. Denial delays. And delay compounds impact. In the final chapter, we explore your role in shaping systemic change. Because collective trauma is not only inherited, it is influenced by participation. The future imprint is not predetermined, but it is forming. And awareness now alters trajectory later. You are not powerless in the face of global shifts, but you are responsible for how you respond to them. And response shapes imprint. Always.